Hi guys, how you doing? You guys enjoy the film? It was incredible. That ride was an absolute thrill ride. And everyone, welcome to tonight's screening of Amazon MGM Studios Crime 101. Tonight we are joined by audiences from across the country: Nashville, New York, Seattle. Congratulations. Sorry about that, Patriots, you know what I'm saying? Now let's dig into the incredible filmmaker and cast of Crime 101. Please join me in welcoming the director, writer, and producer, Bart Layton. Give it up for him, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, two who really don't need any introduction at all, the stars of the film, Halle, Berry, and Chris Hemsworth. Goodness. All right. Your hearts all calm after that intense film. It was great. And so this is for everybody here. Let's just jump right into it. Crime 101 feels like, a fresh take on a classic thriller, right? Classic thrill heist. What is it about the story that these characters really pulled each of you into it? Did you really want to tell the story?
I think you said it actually. I felt like I don't know how you guys felt, but I missed those movies that I grew up with that were like these great nights out at the cinema that were, like you say, thrillers or crime thrillers, and we all have our different version of those. I remember Collateral, I remember I remember all those things. And I think when I read the short story that this is based on, I sort of felt like, well, this has that potential to be one of those grown-up, smart movies, but it's still a roller coaster, and it's also hopefully has substance to it. And so I just thought, would it be amazing to try and do something that brought some of that back a little bit?
Yeah.
And I think these guys felt similarly.
Yeah. So, what about the script for you when you read the characters? Where you're like, I want to be part of this.
Everything Bart said, but yes, I so related to my character of Sharon. I am, of course, right where Sharon is. I'm down that path of life, and I've been questioning, because society is telling me that I'm too old, I'm washed up, I'm irrelevant, and so I think Sharon comes face to face with that, as you saw in the movie. And what I loved about her is that she faced her reality with strength, and that's how I would hope every woman will face their reality when they get down that path of life, with strength and not allow themselves to be diminished. And when I saw her stand up for herself like that, I was like, oh, hell yeah. I'm in.
And Bart, this cast, let's talk about the cast for a second. It's absolutely stacked. How did you do that, man? How did you get all of them on board? It's crazy.
Still have no idea how that happened. I think, I have that kind of if you don't ask, you don't get mentality, and so I figure like the worst that will happen is you'll go to Halle Berry or Chris Hemsworth and they'll say, thanks, but it's not for me. And the crazy thing about this was that we sort of reached for the stars, and amazingly, they said yes. The only person I wrote the part for was Barry Keoghan, because we'd worked together before, and I figured he'd do it. But it's dangerous, if you're writing a script and you have Chris or Halle and you can get very quickly locked into that, and then chances are they probably won't be up for it. But in this case, yeah, they were, and it's been kind of a dream since.
Yeah, how was it really working with Chris, though? Tell us the real truth. Be honest. Real truth. Be honest about it. Yeah.
The real truth is he's annoyingly good at bloody everything. like you're just looking for something that he's just not accomplished at. And I don't know how you guys felt, but I feel like this is a pretty extraordinary performance that he's given.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's actually a scene, I think, as you guys are both sitting there at the diner table, I believe, and you're saying, you're a little bit too put together. Everything looks a little bit too perfect. And I love that quote that you say, the line you say in there, Halle, said, people with chaotic pasts have to create order. Is there anything like relatable to that in your own personal life, Chris?
Dig into my past.
Yeah, there we go.
I mean, I think for all of us, that line sort of resonates in some degree as we attempt to sort of piece ourselves together and present ourselves to the world and work out what is it that the world wants from us. And then you get to a certain point, you think, well, what is it that I want to contribute? And there's less of a facade or sort of a persona that we're wearing. And each of these characters, what drew me to the script, were arriving at their crossroads and got to a position in their lives, or a point in their lives where the presentation and the walls that have been put up in front of them, the injustices that have been laid before them, or the corruption within the police department, as far as Mark's character, all of it was wearing thin, and there was a necessity to break through. And I think we all go through that. Just as far as the question for me personally, every few years we get to a point where we realize, okay, now I've figured it out. And then you look back 5, 10 years later and you go, God, what was I talking about? I knew nothing. And so I'm sure I'll do the same in a few years' time. And by no means have I figured it out. It's just I enjoy the curiosity and the sort of adventure to it all.
That's what I love about this film too, is there's morally complex characters, right? It's not sort of black and white. These aren't your traditional heroes and villains. And I feel like that when you're watching them, even though they're might be doing some bad things, but you can relate to them. What was that like, sharing that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, because I come from documentary originally, and so my process is, believe it or not, there are of all of the characters in this movie, there are real versions of them out there. So there are real jewel thieves, some of whom are still out there. I guess the good ones, the less good ones are in prison, and you can reach them, and you can talk to them. And we identified a couple who did a similar kind of job to what Chris's character did, and the same with Nick Nolte's character and Mark's character. And so all of that is really based in research, and what you find is there's just no black and white to any of it. People who have done bad things or criminal things, if you scratch the surface, you'll find that they probably grew up in an environment where no one really cared about them a whole lot, and so why should they be expected to care about you or your property? So there's a lot that goes on, and so it's kind of trying to find the gray. And of course, this city, like my city, there's a growing wealth chasm, and we wanted to try and illustrate some of that. Like at the beginning of the movie, the diamonds that start downtown here, in that short 40 minutes, this was something that I was shocked by when I first started researching. That short 40-minute drive up to Calabasas, those diamonds start off at one value. By the time they get up there, that has more than quadrupled in value, because the Kardashians aren't going downtown to buy those diamonds, or whoever it is that's shopping it. So all of that was stuff that we wanted to try to smuggle into the fabric of the film in a way.
That's it. And you should talk about the city, because the city itself, Los Angeles, right here, it feels like a character. I mean, I saw that film before, and I was driving down, and I was like, I felt like I was in the film. I was like, yes. I was like, hey, let's go. I got Odie and Intense. It was incredible. So what was that like, being and shooting here in the actual city?
I mean,
for better or for worse.
Good and bad. I mean, there was conversations. Could we shoot it in Australia? Could we shoot? Because your money goes a lot further.
That's right.
Yeah, and Chris lives there, so he was like, I definitely
But we can make it look like Los Angeles.
But for me, it was a deal breaker. That was a deal breaker. Like it felt like I don't know this is your guys' town, but we tried to find corners that felt real. We didn't do a whole lot of visual effects, or kind of any. We didn't do much studio stuff. Pretty much everything is out on the street, and it felt like that was kind of essential. The bad thing is it's really expensive. The good thing is you get the best crew in the world, and Los Angelinos are just a lovely crowd. We just had a really good. Everyone's positive. Everyone's it's like, and because we're making a movie for the cinema, maybe it's a throwback. We had a huge amount of enthusiasm, so that was great.
And obviously we have to talk about the action, the car chases. What was that like, shooting those car chases here in the city? I mean, just the complexity of it.
That was wild. I mean, I don't know whether you guys realize, but when you shut down blocks and blocks, you don't just shut down all the junctions of the streets. you have to shut down every property on those streets. So if someone comes out to walk their dog and Chris is blazing at 80 miles an hour down the street, and that is him driving it a lot of the time, in addition to the best stunt drivers in the world who happen to live here. I know one of them is in a movie theater in Burbank, so hats off to him right now. And so it's kind of amazing, the extent that goes into a lot of those people have to go and stay in a hotel for a night. And we wanted it to feel real, that car chase, we wanted it to feel like as authentic and visceral as possible. And a lot of that is to do with how much planning goes into it, I guess.
That's a lot of planning. By the way, did anybody recognize any little street corners and stuff when you were watching it? I had no idea. I was like,
Sorry if we shut down your block.
damn, I'm trying to get that soda. Halle, Sharon, she's sharp, she's composed, and highly capable. But she's also like at crossroads. You mentioned this, how these characters are at a crossroads. Professionally, personally. What resonated with you in this character? You mentioned a little bit beforehand, but if you care to elaborate a little bit more on this sort of what you felt like you related to in her character.
Like I said, being at that crossroad, what I loved about Sharon that's not really my reality, she got a door shut, clearly, but yet another way was made. And so it was that question, about what's morally right. And I think many people, given those same circumstances, would make the same choice. You know what I mean? And is it wrong? And how wrong is it? How wrong is it if you go back to the top and you look at the injustice that was dealt to her? So how wrong is it? You have to ask yourself these questions. And I loved that part of this movie. It will allow everyone in here to make that moral judgment for themselves, right? We don't preach about it. We don't decide if it's right or wrong. We don't judge it ourselves within the movie. So that's left for the audience to judge for themselves also. And I thought that was pretty poignant about this movie.
You're right, because when you watch that moment, you're like, hell yeah, do that.
I think most women at that point would say, hell yeah, do that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that.
That's news too. I was like, do that. That's great. Yeah. Chris, you mentioned that you were starstruck working with Halle. What was that like? Like the first day walking in there, working with her. I had you to forget your lines. Like, what was that
It's the
like?
same as it is for everybody being in a room with someone who is such a goddess and represents, an iconic film actress, but also as an individual, just such a wonderful person. And I'd heard amazing things, and the moment I walked on set, it all came true, and I thought, oh, she's everything and more. But just to sit opposite her in a scene, and I've had this happen one other time in my career where you're so absorbed in the moment, and I'm just watching like a fan. I may as well have some popcorn there. And Bart's like, you're going to contribute here, Chris. I'm like, oh, yeah. And to have a scene partner like that as well, that just lifts your game, lifts everyone's game on set, is remarkable. And there was just such grace and integrity to how she approached the script, and such enthusiasm for the story, and the same sort of passion that we all have for the script.
Oh my God, Chris!
Come on now. Didn't love here. I love it.
It's just an absolute dream. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's so about the tell us a little bit about some of the other cast members a little bit. I don't know if I'm here right now, but how was it? I mean, I mentioned before this all-star cast. What was that like?
I mean, I, like Chris, I was intimidated. I hadn't done this kind of, made some documentaries. I made a smallish movie that thankfully a lot of people, including these guys, liked. And so, yes, intimidated. But then the thing that I can say to you guys is, they're superstars. There is a reason for that, because... talk too much. It's right.
Didn't like it. Oh, it's back on.
You guys, yeah, okay.
Oh, it's back.
And so, but I would love to take more credit for the performances. The truth is if you hire people like this, like Chris says, they are kind of extraordinary. And half the time I was at the monitor, like Chris, just. And because I'd written it and I hadn't ever heard it really performed before, and I'm not someone who sort of delivers the lines myself, and there's a limit to how much I want to rehearse. You watch it, and what they do is, it's like alchemy. It's real. And I think we had a pretty lovely crew in terms of like our vibe was pretty great. I do a lot of prep, like an unhealthy amount of prep, so that the hope is that when we get to the day, it's pretty relaxed. Like I feel like we've got a good plan, and then they've got the room to play and do the thing they're amazing at, and I just stand back and I'm like, wow, watch that.
That's what so now for me, all I'm thinking about is if you're writing this, do you ever get up and like and act it out sometimes?
Occasionally when I'm storyboarding, there's complex things where, you know, the blocking is complex. Me and the storyboarder will start getting each other in a headlock and mucking around and doing all that to try and figure it out. But most of the time it's very, I don't do the lines, and I hate table
Or
reads.
else he wouldn't have written a scene for me that was insane. Insane!
She's never gonna
Tell us about that.
And
What was that like?
do it.
Yep.
How did it go,
So, Bart, one day it was rehearsal and I go in and I'm like, you know, Bart, I don't know if we need to say all these words in this scene. It was like a mathematical equation from hell. Like if I recited this scene, like it took me about 5 minutes to go through this mathematical gymnastics.
The editors are the hiccup.
And I said to Bart, I don't think this is going to make the movie. Isn't there another way we can do this? And Bart said, no, it had to be this way. And this is how, you know, when she's smart and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but Bart, really? He said, come on, you can do it. And then I realized, okay, maybe I'm just being lazy. Maybe this is going to be a really great scene in the movie, so I'm going to go learn this thing. So I come, it's my first day working with Chris. I come, I got my math all down, and it's in my head, and I'm like, this is rolling off my tongue. And I'm like, wow, Bart, you know, maybe you were right. This was worth spending, you know, all this time learning this stuff I don't even understand. But hey, I did it. Just to find out when I go to the first screening, it's gone. No! It's all gone. It's on the floor. It's on the floor. And I was like, I told you.
It was
This
genuinely
didn't
brilliant and amazing. But there was a point where, you know, the movie was too long. You may still feel the movie was too long. It was longer, and there were a few things that, it's tough. So,
Well, we'll be looking for
that's your
that
only
scene.
takeout. That's your story.
That's my only story. I love that story.
Take a deep breath.
I love the moment too when you probably was like, you cut that out. I love it.
Actually, I just proved to myself that, you know, perimenopause, you know, has not, you know, taken all my faculties away. I was able to memorize that. It was good.
Was there, Chris? Was there any moment from filming that just stood out? That was like that was very memorable. That you'll never forget.
Yeah, the entire thing. I mean, it really was. It was just working with such incredible people every day. I mean, that was actually one of our first scenes, and I was sitting there going, wow, she's memorized this entire mathematical equation. Will it be in the movie? But it was brilliant. So it'll be in the DVD extras if that still exists. You can do it for us now if you want.
If I could, I would, trust me.
But when the scene in the bar, that was particularly special. That was one of our first scenes we shot together, and there was a real sort of both of them sort of analysing each other, and obviously you've seen the film, quite a big reveal. The scene with Mark and I in the car was interesting because Mark and I have obviously worked together before for years, and we're so excited to work together again in a very different setting.
Yes.
And by the time we got to shoot that scene, we had been shooting separately across 2 or 3 months, but not actually together.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this real strange sort of build-up, and there's a lot of anticipation and conversation about what it's going to be. And the scene, we're saying one thing and it's about something else, and that's what was so beautiful about a lot of these scenes with each of these characters. It's all subtext and layers, and you could have been talking about a number of different things, but what they were really aiming for was not being articulated, and it's what was between the lines even resonated more. And yet there was such a familiarity with being with Mark within that space. I've done it worked with him so many times, but both of us talked about that scene and thought, oh, this is something special. There's some sort of, again, alchemy that occurs. And even with the physicality of shooting it, a few things happened where we had shot my coverage, and as Mark asked the question, have you seen the Thomas Crown affair? It's about a thief. The traffic stopped. and we're in real traffic. And then when I answer, the traffic took off and I drive off. And then when we turned and the camera back onto Mark, the same thing happened. Around the same location as we're just doing laps of the street of this block. And it come to a stop. And as soon as he asked the question and I'd answered, the traffic took off. And that happens sometimes. You have this sort of the alchemy between yourself and the actor, but also the environment. The movie gods kind of step in and things come together.
It's amazing.
But that one was particularly.
By the way, it's funny you mentioned that because I just completely forgot that you guys have worked together. By the way, watching how I was like,
The green guy.
yeah. It's like, you guys show up like, wait, where's your? No. That just proves what fantastic job you guys did. You really disappeared into the roles, and you know, again, like, the confidence of this film. You know, the confidence where you trusted the audience. You didn't have to spoon feed. You know, you left the tension, you left the silence, you left the moments there for us to enjoy. You know, we appreciate that really, truly. It's amazing. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying thanks.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome. All right, well, we're going to jump into some audience questions real fast, if you don't mind. We'll jump right here. This is from Miguel in Yuma, Arizona. What was the most challenging scene to film?
Well, we'll probably all have a different
I already
one.
told you mine.
Yeah.
Glad you didn't see it.
I think for me, what was the most challenging? I mean, you know, having not shot a car chase before, that was kind of, you know, one that we had a high bar for, you know, in terms of like, you know, there's been a car chases since the beginning of time, or beginning of movie making, and so you want to do something that has an identity that doesn't feel derivative, and it's not going, and it feels like our movie. So the mantra for that was kind of like, what would this really feel like, and to avoid going too far into movie world, you know, where the behavior was as real as it could be, and we shot as close to the line as I think you can go in terms of, you know, safety and all that. So that was probably, that was a new experience and a totally exhilarating one, I think.
Yeah.
The scene in challenging, but it was the most exciting was the scene with Barry at the convenience store, because he's just a live wire. He's the most unpredictable, dangerous, electric energy in the most lovable way too. His enthusiasm is sort of boundless, but you don't know what he's going to do within the scene, especially when you're trying to choreograph, you know, throwing cans and, you know, whatever other items are on the shelves at each other, and then he's biting me on the hand at one point, which I didn't know was coming. Deserved a little slap up there. But that's kind of scenes that there's this sort of unpredictable, you know, energy that you can, if you choreograph too much, you remove that. But if you don't choreograph it enough, you end up smashing each other through a fridge or whatever. And we had done, I remember rehearsing that, and he was like, "No, I'm done. We're doing too much." He just was kind of, he was out. And so it was pretty, you know, spontaneous. And but I think again, that's kind of like a lot of the film. There's authenticity and a grit, a visceral feel to it.
I remember I had put almost the entire day aside for that, because I thought there was, and we shot it so fast, didn't we?
Yeah.
We were like 2-3. It was like, because it just felt like we did it in a couple of long takes. It felt electric, didn't it? It felt lively, yeah.
I love that, man. That's cool. The next question is from Christine in Garden Grove. What do you hope audiences keep thinking about after credits roll on Prime 101 that they'll take with them afterwards?
Well, I'll give my 2 cents, and then I feel like, you know, we didn't want to give you candy floss that just evaporate. We wanted to give you like a nourishing meal, and the challenge is you want all of the tension and hopefully the entertainment, but also maybe just this. I think for me, there was questions about like all of the decisions that we make in life. You know, there's a lot of these characters are driven by status anxiety, you know, and the need to, like, maybe if I have all of this about the car, the apartment, and the look, and you know, and that much money in the bank, then I'll feel like a success.
Yes.
And and if other people see me as a success, then I'll really feel like that. And I think you can go a long way and get to a point where you realize maybe I've sacrificed a lot. Maybe I didn't have a family in Sharon's case, or maybe whatever it was, or I gave a lot to a company that actually never valued me, or whatever. So it's kind of like trying to maybe interrogate that idea of like the decisions that we all make and whether they're driven from a sense of like internal self-worth or like, and now we live with phones and all of this stuff, and there's a metric for how valuable you are.
Yeah.
And so I guess a lot of that was what was going through my head. And what about you guys?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's if the audience leaves questioning their own worth and their own value, and how do we determine that? What's the yardstick to measuring that? I think then we've done something really good, just giving people, especially during these times, something to think about.
Yeah, we've sort of touched on this a bit, but the kind of the moral ambiguity that is in play throughout the film, and I think understanding where people have come from before you judge, and you know, we'd like to sort of sit back and say, oh, I wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have done that, or I live by this exact code, but life's not that simple, you know, and we're all faced with, you know, incredibly or vast, different, dramatically different circumstances, you know, from the day we're born onwards, and each of these characters come from very different backgrounds, but they share sort of a lot of things in common as well. And just the fact that it's a big, beautiful, entertaining film, you know, Bart said this earlier, but it's not the type of film that I feel like we make too many of them anymore. And often we do give all the answers to the audience as opposed to raising questions and allowing the audience to consider it rather than sort of, you know, shoving it down their throat. And I really appreciated that the first time I read it, and I hope people, you know, enjoyed that.
Yeah, we made it for you guys. I mean, really, we wanted to make the kind of movie we would want to go and see.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's about it, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for the question. Please give it up. Halle, Chris Hemsworth, Bart Layton, and going.